see. And I was planning to show some pictures. I really apologize tonight. I was working in the car on my laptop. I drained the battery, and apparently my adapter burned out or something on the way here, so I'm out of juice. But I'll show some of those pictures tomorrow. It's all right, because what I wanted to share, I don't really need many pictures for. I kind of wanted to show you a picture of Wildwood and a few things. So I started working at Wildwood. I came there initially when I was 21 years old, in the year 2000. And that's been my home base ever since. I joined the church really largely through Wildwood's ministry. It played an important part of my getting introduced to Seventh-day Adventist. And so that's been my home base. Originally, I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm used to this kind of region. The weather feels a bit colder than down south. I was kind of shocked getting out of the car. Looks like a little cold front come through just in time for summer here. So I know what that's like. My dad said it was snowing in Wisconsin somewhere, so that's just, I guess, par for the course up here. It was 85 degrees and sunny down in Chattanooga yesterday. Well, I know it was warm here previously. Comes and goes, right? So anyway, I'm glad to be here. If you know Wisconsin much, I'm from La Crosse. So I was raised a Roman Catholic, and I'm going to share some of my story this evening of how I joined the church, because really it was the health message somehow that reached me. And so this has been my life now for the past 20 plus years. I've just kind of made myself available to the Lord in the health ministries. And so I was trained at Wildwood. I was director of their mission school for about 7 years. And so that was a large part of my education personally and training. And then helped start a ministry called LIGHT. So LIGHT is an acronym for Lay Institute for Global Health Training. It was founded in 2008 with the purpose to make health evangelism training available to every Seventh-day Adventist in every country, in their country and in their language. When I was director of our school at Wildwood, I noticed that there were very few short mission schools, 6 months to 1 year, 2 years at the most, very few of those in the world field. And I've just seen that as a really important component in the big picture of this movement, where lay people can go and get trained for mission work and go off and do lots of different things with the talents God has given to them. And so I was blessed by it, and I enjoyed my years in running the school at Wildwood, and so I wanted to see it replicated. So LIGHT has developed a strategy of going into new territories, new countries, and we have a standardized curriculum that we translated in 15 different languages. It's a 125-hour course. So in 125 hours, we believe we can get someone up to speed on the health message and able to share that in the communities around them and get a church actively engaged in some local health ministry. And so we go in and we do these 1 month training courses, 125 hours. Usually it's in a 1 month intensive, and build interest from there for bigger schools. So we now have 45 mission schools around the world that teach at least a 6 month curriculum or longer. And we've run hundreds of the shorter 1 month courses. We've trained over 30,000 Seventh-day Adventists in over 90 countries. And so we partner with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Something unique maybe with us is that we're a lay ministry, but we only enter a field if the official church headquarters invites us. So therefore, our relationship with the church is strong. The General Conference Health Department and so forth invites us at times and refers places where we could go in and do some training. And locally, a local conference in Brazil or wherever it is often just has one person in charge of health ministries for the whole conference. It's really just a lot of work. So we bring in teams, we do training, we spread out to different churches, and we help give a boost to helping Seventh-day Adventist churches get to work in their communities using the right arm of the gospel. So that has been my work for the past 12 years, also helping part-time at Wildwood when I've been there. And so it's been a real blessing. to be a part of this work is something I really enjoy. Even though I'm not a physician, I'm not a health worker, but when I joined the church, I saw the importance of the right arm of the gospel, and I just wanted to get involved in that. So my work has been more teaching and administration, not so much the medical side of it, but that's kind of the people that I work with as well. So there's physicians, nurses, mid-level practitioners, lay people. Everyone's got a role in the health message. I think that's one of the confusing parts when we think of medical missionary work. It sounds like it's just for medical people, but that's actually not the case, and that's not really the intent of the usage of the word. And so something I want to try to share a little bit more about the Sabbath. It's really complicated in Latin America and in Brazil, where people are speaking Spanish and Portuguese, because when you translate medical missionary, it literally gets translated physician missionary, okay? And so everyone in Brazil has the mindset, oh, a medical missionary, you are the doctor missionaries, so it's only for doctors. So you're trying to break down all kinds of barriers on that term, which it's really more like Elder Wilson says, comprehensive health ministries is really more the intent, more broad, including everything from the top of medicine down to the simple health education done in communities. There's an important statement that I wanted to share here from the book Evangelism, page 523. It says, "I wish to tell you that soon there will be no work done in ministerial lines but medical missionary work." We feel like this time is coming soon upon us. We believe that Jesus is coming soon. And the events of this past year, I hope, is a bit of a wake-up call to the importance of the health message. It was given to God's people through Scripture and in the last days for a lot of reasons. For one, so we can be more healthy and happy and live more vibrant lives. Jesus hopes us to be living a more vibrant, healthful experience. He does not want us to be full of disease and so forth. So he wishes the best for his people, and that we share that with the world around us. And all of this can just help us personally, and it also can be just such a powerful tool in reaching souls for Jesus, ministering like he worked. The majority of his time in ministry was spending time one-on-one with people, healing them. He knew that was a way to reach the heart, because people's hearts are cold, they are closed, and that sacrificial ministry, showing interest in people, is what softened the hearts and allowed him to present the gospel to them. So, something I forgot to do is introduce the couple that came with me, Ron and Karen Lynch. If you guys want to wave to the church here, they've been such a blessing. They came and took our course. They left their careers and moved down to Wildwood and took our training some years ago, and have been involved and travel around the U.S. doing church trainings. And Karen has had a cooking class on 3ABN, and so really thankful that you guys came up as well. And for driving me, thanks, Ron. That was a blessing. So we're really happy to be with you. So I'll be speaking more on the importance of health in the gospel work, and then we'll be talking more practically. All of us will be sharing tomorrow afternoon, and then Sunday and through the week. I'm leaving Sunday night. Karen and Ron will carry on cooking classes, hydrotherapy classes, some really good things that would be good for everyone to take part of. So, and thanks for being here tonight. It's really great. We always have a Friday evening Vespers at our church, and I've seen a big blessing with it. I'm glad that we can be here doing that here as well together. So, what's kind of interesting also, not only am I not a physician, but I'm kind of the last person in the world that you would think would be involved in health ministries, coming from where I was, because I used to be a sausage maker, and my father is a butcher, and owned a butcher shop. So I grew up, of course, eating meat, but more than that. When I was a teenager, I used to have to go there on weekends working and, watching pigs and cows getting butchered and making hamburger. My job was more on hamburger and sausage and making hot dogs and bratwurst and beef jerky and beef sticks and summer sausage and ring bologna and all of these things, and running the smokehouse, hams and bacon and everything. So that's what I had to do. It wasn't really a love of mine. It was something my dad dragged me into. He's from a small town in Iowa. Went to, he's a Vietnam veteran. He got into the meatpacking industry and ended up purchasing his own place. His name is Mike Hartley. His business was Mike's Meats. And I was his young apprentice. So I went through 12 years of Catholic education. I went through St. Thomas Aquinas High School there in La Crosse. And my parents were really faithful Catholics. Every Sunday we'd go to church. I went through confirmation, the whole gamut. But really, I wasn't that. In high school, I wasn't a good kid really at all. I kind of was rebellious in a way. I kind of hated the Roman Catholic Church, causing trouble, so forth. I don't need to get too much into that, but I wasn't I was an altar boy when I was younger. But once I got my driver's license, we'd stay out late partying, and on Sunday I'd be sleeping in, and I told my mom there was this 3:15 afternoon church that I was just really thankful for. So I would go there, and I would take the bulletin, and then I'd go running around with my friends, and I'd come back, and I'd say there I was at church. So I was as far away as you could get from God, and not even a good Catholic, right? So leaving high school, I didn't really have a lot of direction about what I wanted to do. I wasn't really too clear, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to be a butcher. So I was going off to college. I went to Menominee, to the University of Wisconsin at Stout. And so I studied there, and I guess my best classes were more in mathematics, so I guess I was kind of geared towards engineering. I was taking calculus classes and things, but really wasn't my interest. I was exploring all sorts of things, getting into all sorts of things, just seeking truth. Got into psychedelic drugs, hanging out with hippie crowds. Went off to see some concerts, started really impacting me a lot. I was really enamored by that, reading all of these books on mysticism and Eastern philosophies and so forth, and I thought I just wanted to take a year off of college to travel and explore things and try to see what I'm supposed to do with my life. Okay, so I was just a confused young person. So I started doing different jobs, and I would take time off and go follow these bands around, and there was a time where I moved in the country, rented this geodesic dome, kind of a hippie place, no running water, so that was interesting. And my best friend had an older brother. He was 4 years older than us, and he was this hardcore hippie guy. He had long dreadlocks. He was an excellent guitar player. He was into a lot of drugs, but he was a straight-A student at the university at Madison, so he was this highly intellectual guy. We just looked up to him because he was in all the bands, blues bands and different kind of bands in Madison. He was top, so we were really looking up to him. And so we hang out with this guy, and he's teaching us music, and we're kind of getting these visions of, living in the country, started seeing all these problems with society. I don't know if I want to do all that. I just want to be at peace in the country with nature, doing music and whatever, I didn't know what I was talking about, but this was just in my head. Getting into astrology and all sorts of stuff. So I was drawing birth charts and, fortune telling, hocus pocus. This is what we were doing. So anyway, let me come to the point here now. So my buddy leaves us. He gets frustrated with us, and he just takes off. And he goes to Europe alone, hitchhiking through Europe, following this band around. So I was frustrated with him. Then we left this cabin, and I went back working in the city, and months had passed. So I remember the day. I was in my friend's apartment playing video games and smoking pot. In comes my buddy. Okay, his dreadlocks are cut off. He's holding a King James Bible in his hand. And we looked at him like, what spaceship did you just come off of, man? What happened to you? It was just, we were stunned, absolutely stunned. I was speechless. And he wasn't even a Roman Catholic. I mean, his dad was a hippie, and he never went to any church. And what was he doing with the King James Bible? And what happened to your hair, man? So we were just kind of staring at him, and I couldn't think of what to say, except I just said, how are the concerts? Because really I was jealous that he got to go see this band that I really loved around all these places in Europe. And he's like, oh, well, I went to one, and it was fine, but then I got sidetracked. And what happened was, he said, I went to a vegetarian restaurant in Basel, Switzerland. It was a Country Life restaurant, for those that are familiar with Country Life. It was a part of OCI, Outpost Centers International Lay Ministry. And there was a Spanish missionary. He was a chef there. And that day, he was working hard. If you know kitchen work, he was working hard in the kitchen. Didn't get a lot of chance to fellowship with the customers. But this is Jim talked for hours there. My buddy was late, so it was like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was coming in late. So the whole afternoon. And then my friend said, well, I'm looking for a youth hostel to stay in. Do you know any place I could stay around here? And this man said, well, he thought about it for a second, and he said, well, if I want to really win this guy for the Lord, I need to open up myself to him. And he had a good feeling about my friend, though he was a druggie and everything, but he seemed trustworthy at the same rate. And he said, well, you can stay at my place. So he opened up his house, and he welcomed him, and he stayed there for 3 days. And when he went to work, and this man had a wife and small child, but when he went to work, he had my friend also leave, right? And when he came back, he could stay there at night. And so they talked and talked and talked and talked. Organic agriculture, country living, vegetarian food, all of these things. And my friend, and this guy, his name was Jose. He wasn't a Swiss. He married a Swiss woman, but he was from Spain. And so there he was in Switzerland. Didn't even speak German, Swiss German. So that's probably why he was in the kitchen, actually. Just realized that. Okay. And so, and my friend, he didn't speak any German either, so they hit it off really well. But so Jose is witnessing about the Holy Spirit and his conversion and how he used to be a hippie and how his life is so much better now. And my friend was just really, just liked him and was just listening to him. And so they ended up talking about an organic farm in Italy. And he said, I really think you should go visit this farm in Italy. It's really just fantastic. It's just you can work there and learn country living in an organic agriculture in the home of your people. Because my buddy was Italian. He was his last name is Menolacino, and he studied Italian when he was in college at Madison, and he really wanted to go to Italy anyway. So he's like, I'm definitely going to this farm. So he lands in Italy. He finds this farm. This Adventist man's name is Alberto Olivucci. He goes down to a train station, picks up my buddy, he's never met him before, brings him up to his farm. This is an Adventist family, an Italian family that lived in Rimini, which is a city on the coast, on the eastern coast. And they decided they were just going to sell their house, move out of the city, go to the country, and start this kind of country ministry. So they bought a place 3,000 feet elevation above the pollution line. They had their own water source, a nice big farm with olive trees and fruit trees and a big space to till ground. And the house was built in the 13th century. It was a large stone house with 12 rooms in it. It was in a touristic area. And Saint Francis of Assisi, if you know anything about Catholicism, he lived just down you could walk to his monastery. So this was San Marino, a city on a hill, was across the valley. At night you would see the city lit up on the hill. Just an amazing area. So they moved there, and they would bring people there to teach them about the Lord was their objective, but first it's like, well, let's learn agriculture, let's figure out how things work in the country here, and they would have prayer and worship and study about, the Lord, with them. And so it was kind of like, if you've ever heard of WOOF before, anyone ever heard of WOOF? WOOFers? World Organization for Organic Farmers, WOOF. And you could become a WOOFer, a young person could look on the WOOF website and find thousands of farms around the world that are part of this that you could go to and volunteer. And you don't have to pay anything. You can learn their type of agriculture. You work half day, and you get room and board. That's kind of the system. Worldwide, any country, it's the same thing. And so that's kind of what they were doing. So that's what my friend was doing. And he was now recruiting me to go there with him. And there were several of us there, but it didn't strike interest in anyone else except me. I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm looking for something different. I kind of want to get out of this town. I want to explore different things. And he's like, these are really spiritual people. I was like, this sounds really great, these spiritual people living in the country. He's like, they're Christians. And I looked at him, I was like, Christians? Really? He's like, yeah, but they're really spiritual people. He's like, I've never met a spiritual Christian before. What does that mean? I only know Roman Catholics. And then they were nice. I'm not saying these were not good Catholic people, but my concept of spirituality was not fitting with Roman Catholicism, and I had never met a Protestant in my life. Never. So I had no perception of this, but I was like, well, I don't care what they are. That was my, I'll go anyway, you know. What are they? And he's like, well, he said, they're Seventh-day Adventists, but he said in Italian. I forget how you say it in Italian. And I was like, what is that? Is that an Italian church? He said, no, they're called the Seventh-day Adventist. I said, the Seventh-day what? Seventh-day Adventist. What on earth is that? That's a church? That's a Christian church? What kind of name is that? It just seemed really weird to me. It's like, well, they go to church on Saturday. I was like, okay, why do they do that? Because Jesus went to church on Saturday. Well, that seems like a good reason. I don't care what day they go to church, you know. What's Adventist? They believe Jesus is coming soon. I said, okay, yeah. I think I remember hearing about that. Yeah, Jesus is coming soon, Adventist. Oh, okay. Well, that sounds fine. My main interest was this country, you know. So I said, I want to go check it out. So I got on a plane with him. We flew to Italy, and I stayed there for 3 months. And these were the first Adventists I ever met. So I had yoga books and all these different books on Buddhism and stuff. And so, but they were very nice, very patient with me. We'd sit down in the morning on this beautiful landscape overlooking this valley. Just the beauty was unparalleled, and the food was just outstanding. Everything was made from scratch. There was this old Italian grandma hand-making pasta, making fresh sauces from all these herbs and tomatoes from the garden, and everything was just exquisite. It was just fantastic. The olive, you know, I was helping them harvest olives that we had the neighbors press, first cold press for this fresh olive oil that was opaquely green. It was just so flavorful. And all these fruits, I was like, I've never eaten anything like this before. I mean, I was literally hamburgers and pizza and sausage. I never ate vegetarian. I was not interested in vegetarian food. So the Lord brought my friend there, because I would have never gone to that restaurant, I guarantee you. There was no way I was stepping in a vegetarian restaurant. But I was interested in country and nature, so I would go to the farm. And there, that was the food. And I was like, this is really good food. It was just the best introduction you could ever have to, you know, vegetarian food. I just noticed, because I decided I'm going to try something different, because I had heard about these guys that were into LSD and all these drugs, and they moved to India, and they stopped taking drugs and started meditating, and they were getting into all these different levels of consciousness and everything. So in my mind, I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm not going to do any drugs. I'm going to live this really clean lifestyle, and I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to see if I can kind of do what those guys were doing. But soon as I was there, I was surrounded by these really great people. Every morning they would teach about Jesus before we'd go to work. And it just had a really big impact on me. And they could see that, so they bought me a Bible, and every day I was paying less attention to my Eastern religion books and more attention to the Bible. And as the weeks went on, I mean, it's like my whole life was changing. My body was, I was so energetic. I had energy like blasting through the ceilings. I didn't even know what to do with it. I'm just looking back. I was so amped up about it. I was feeling so good. I had smoked pot every day for like at least 4 years, and it seems like I was like, man, I forgot what it felt like to be healthy. I was just feeling really good. My mind was so clear. It was just like, and I didn't have any addictions to any of these things, so it wasn't hard. You know, I was to not drink, to not smoke. I wasn't addicted to cigarettes, and so, you know, it wasn't a hard thing for me. In fact, I was really enjoying it right away. Like I'm really feeling like I'm onto something here. This is really, really, really positive. So I would just be like bursting with energy to this guy Alberto. I'm like, all right, Alberto, what do you have for me to do? I just wanted to get to work. I was like, and this Alberto guy was so slow. Like he had this like different mentality. He would just kind of look around, and he would speak really slow. He'd say, today we will plant, and I'm like, potatoes. It's like, where are they? And I'm just, I had to expend this energy. So I love this guy, really soft, just a kind-hearted guy. But he's really phlegmatic, just really, really, really relaxed. And so he's like coaching me. He's like, you need to get up early, routine. You should pray. I said, well, I don't really pray. He's like, well, there's a transition here. So I'd like do whatever my meditation was, but it started transitioning into like, I was reading the Bible a lot, and I read through the whole New Testament. I remember the moment. In the afternoon, he always gave us the afternoon free, and I'd really just hike up into the mountains, and I got to this peak where I could see 360 up on top of this peak. It was like this ridge. And it was just beautiful. And I remember the moment I was reading in the book of Romans, and just suddenly it struck me. Like I was kind of wrestling with it maybe a little bit while I was going through it, but suddenly it hit me like a bolt of lightning that God was speaking to me now. Like the Bible to me was just like any other book, the Bhagavad Gita or anything else, a spiritual book, okay. But now it was like suddenly it's not. Okay, suddenly I realized that this book is God speaking to me, and I'm starting to realize what it means to be a sinner. I'm starting to realize that I am a sinner. I'm starting to realize who Jesus is and what he was here for and everything. It just all started to come together. I never understood the gospel. I could not have explained one thing about the gospel after sitting through 12 years of religion class in the Catholic Church. And reading through the New Testament was a shock to me. I was like, where is this? Where is that? Where does Mary ascend into heaven? I was convinced that was surely in the Bible. I mean, she's depicted as the mother of God in the celestial courts. She's someone you intercede with. I mean, she's sinless, she's pure, and you just don't see it there. I was just shocked. And I'd recognize, like, I don't see anything in here that would show me that the Sabbath was changed to Sunday. I couldn't find it, just reading it through at face value. So some things were kind of clicking, but this family wasn't like pushing Adventist doctrine on me or anything. They weren't just going through doctrinal studies. I really needed to start on the very basics, just reading through. I remember we were studying in depth the Gospel according to Mark, and so I had a great experience there, and I wanted to be a follower of Christ following my 3 months there. So it's just unforgettable. It was one of those experiences just unforgettable. Even though afterwards I tried to run from it, I could never forget my experience there. It was very real. It was very genuine. I came back to the U.S. My friend and I parted ways. I was surrounded with my old friends. It was very, very hard and challenging for me. I did not know any Christians in that town. I tried to go to an Adventist church one time. There was like 10 old ladies in there in this little chapel, and I looked around. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I didn't even have a collared shirt. I just came in with a t-shirt. I'm sitting in the back, and I'm looking around like, I don't know if I'm ready for church. So I started running, and honestly, it kind of was a creep. Just slowly losing my experience, compromising on things, getting back to drinking lightly, and then more, and then I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do with my life. What does this mean? I want to be a Christian. Well, I don't even know what that means. I don't really understand what Seventh-day Adventists are too much. And so I was confused. I moved to Madison with some friends. I was going to all these parties and concerts and things, but honestly, I felt like I never fit in anywhere. So I was like, everyone's blue and I'm red. I don't know where I fit in, So I was really, really just confused. So this friend's like, I guess a lot of young people are confused. He's like, man, let's go to Alaska. And I said, that's the best idea you've had in a long time. So we got in our car, we quit our jobs, we drove to Alaska. 50 hours of driving. We had nothing lined up there, we're just going there. So we landed in Alaska, and we just started looking for jobs. People said, there's jobs in Cordova. So we had to take a flight to Cordova because you have to fly there or take a boat there. There's no roads. But there's these fisheries. I get a job at a fishery, and I'm just there working in the salmon industry with a bunch of criminals and alcoholics, which was an interesting experience. I'm drinking coffee continually. We're working 20-hour shifts. I was working 100 hours a week. Just working and just barely sleeping, eating garbage, it wasn't taking care of myself at all. Even though I was surrounded with extreme beauty, Alaska is just amazing in the summertime. But I basically destroyed myself over 3 months there, very contrary to my experience in Italy, to the point where I had a complete breakdown physically. I got like an immune system breakdown, and it took me weeks to recover from it. it was towards the end, so I kind of barely survived. I was like, let's get out of here. I feel like miserable and it's getting cold. So we drove down, but we had, pockets were full of money. So I was like, let's go to Hawaii. Let's go to California. So we fly to Hawaii, and I'm on the beach, and I'm vomiting on the beach, and I'm really sick. So I had to go to the clinic, and they told me I had mononucleosis, and I was going to take a month to get better. And so I'm laying on the beach, and I felt like God was speaking to me, like, remember how well you were taking care of yourself in Italy? Compare that with Alaska. Look at the results. I was basically feeling like garbage. And so the Lord was working on my heart, like I needed to go back. It was hard. I tried to start praying, but it's hard to get back into it when you've lost it. And studying the Bible is just very hard for me. And so we went back. We were in California, and I had some turning points in my life there. One was probably the last culminating. Let me just skip to the culminating one. I was in Las Vegas. I was really addicted to gambling too. Another one of my bad, things. So it's 4:00 in the morning. I've been drinking all night long. I've lost hundreds of dollars. I was really upset, but it was really good. It was good that I had this experience because it was just terrible. All right, the Lord just gave me the worst experience you could possibly have, and there was this awakening experience where I looked around this casino, and all I could see was depression, suffering, and misery on everybody's face. And I had this awakening experience where the devil, this is the devil's town, basically, and this whole world is satanic. And I was like, I just wanted to vomit. I was like, I don't want anything to do with this town again. I don't want to ever gamble again. I'm just sick of all this. And I never did. That was the last time I ever gambled. Left town, went back to Wisconsin, but I'm still confused. I'm back making sausage, twisting wieners, and, making hamburger, thinking about what to do with my life. Well, my parents are, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to do there. Which degree do I pursue? Which career? What's my path? I don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste money. So I was confused. Thankfully, my friend came back. My friend that was in Italy with me comes back around. I visit him. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm going to the bars and blah, blah, blah. Nothing good. I said, what are you doing? He says, well, you know the guy that I met in Switzerland? Jose from Spain. He's in Tennessee now. He's farming at an Adventist mission center, an organic farm. He had gotten out of the kitchen finally and wanted to be a farmer. And so he was out there, and he had kept in touch with my friend, and they were down farming. Now, this old self-supporting place. Of course, I didn't know what that was. It sounded like a hippie farm to me with people that didn't do drugs. Because Tennessee, is like this landing spot of all these hippie communes and stuff. So that's what I'm thinking about. A hippie commune in Tennessee with Christians that don't do drugs. He's like, yeah, kinda. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. So I said, okay, well, let's go. I mean, it can't be worse than what I'm doing right now. And the last time I was growing spiritually, I was in the country. I was farming, I was with Christians, I was eating good, taking care of myself. I need to get back on that path, so I'm definitely down with it. So I just decided to confront my dad, and I was like, Dad, I don't know what I'm doing exactly with my life, but I'm just making it clear right now. I'm never going to be a butcher, okay? And you got to sell this place, whenever you're done with it. I'm sorry. He's like, hey, you don't have to feel bad. He's like, I won't blame you for not wanting to be a butcher, but, you need to go to college, right? I was like, well, just give me some time here to figure this out. I'm not opposed to going to college, of course, but I just need to do this. He's like, what are you doing? I'm going to go down to Tennessee, and I'm going to go farming. He's like, okay, why would you want to do that? Plenty of farmland in Wisconsin here. But I said, well, this is what I'm doing. So I packed up my Honda, drove to Tennessee, arrived at this place. So it was an old self-supporting institution that was run down. It used to be an academy. It was closed. There was 5 people there that were trying to regenerate it. And there's this guy from Spain trying to make something out of this land. It was actually good land. It was a good farm. So there was Jose and his wife and another guy and another family. That was about it. Okay. And so I drive there, and I look around, and I'm like, this is not really what I was expecting. It was really more, conservative. I wouldn't have used the word back then. I probably would have said weird. at the time, but I looked around, I'm like, I don't know if I fit in here. I had a Grateful Dead t-shirt with skeletons on it, and I had long hair, okay? And I'm the new guy. So everyone was looking at me like, who are you now? I'm like, I'm Delson's buddy, my friend. And then, but Jose could see, he was really great with me. He just embraced me. He's like, thank you, we're so glad that you're here. He's like, I'm excited to work with you. And Jose was the exact opposite of Alberto Olavucci. Jose runs on high octane. He talks fast, runs fast, works fast. He does not know how to walk. He runs everywhere. He's like, run over here, let's go over here. So I was just like riding this energy of this man, and he welcomed me in his home now. I was in their worships. I saw their family, eating all this healthy food, working in the farm. It was just really good for me, and I really got back on track right away. So I started reading the Bible again. I just fell in love with this guy, Jose. He was just a mentor to me. I wasn't going to leave there because of him. A lot of things about it I didn't like, and I wasn't ready for, but because of this man and his family life, and I could see the fruit of it, the potential of it, I was like, I'm going to stick around here. And I remember one night I almost left. I was literally weeping in my pillow thinking I just wanted to leave, I just want to go and have a beer and a pizza and watch a football game and get out of here, It was like, just go back to the old life, But I could recognize that there was a war between the flesh and the spirit. And I said, I can't let the flesh just be victorious like that. I got to stick it through here a little bit longer. And Jose was encouraging me. So I read through Steps to Christ, which is such a great book for me. Thoughts from the Mount of Blessings, just amazing, and it started to grow. And so I was getting this experience. I started praying and getting Bible studies even. And I started thinking. I said, the most controversial book here looks like The Great Controversy. So it looks like I need to read that book. It's a little heavy. I wasn't much of a reader, so it took a little time, but I trudged through some of that history that I was just like, I was completely unaware of, and some of it was just shocking to me. And then I got into the end time events and everything, and I just realized that it was the truth, and I couldn't deny it. And I had searched through Daniel. I had written out the time prophecies, working it through on my own. Jose was trying to study the Bible with me, but I couldn't understand what he was talking about. His English was a little bit broken, and he's a little bit scattered. He's a great guy, but not the greatest teacher. Me and my friend would sit there for an hour with him, and at the end, I'd look at my friend, I'd say, do you have any idea what he just tried to tell us? And my friend was like, no, just let him go, So I approached Jose, though. I was like, Jose, is there any book that you have that explains these things? And he said, yeah, well, I do have this book, the 27 Fundamental Beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was like, can I borrow that book? He's like, yeah, sure. So I just sat down with that book and I read it through cover to cover, and I was like, it's all coming together now. He was like, that's it, So I was like picking apart, and then I got a Catholic Catechism, and I read through the Catholic Catechism again, which was really hard. It's the most boring read on the face of the earth. It's just full of garbage, really. But just many words explaining erroneous theories, okay? So I'm just trying to get through reading it, and I would put a bookmark every place that was not in harmony with Scripture, and it was filled with it. So I called my parents. I said, I've made a decision. I'm joining the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This was not a welcome message, okay? My sister cursed me out. 4-letter words. She told me I sound like a bleeping evangelist, and just cruelty, okay? I don't want to talk to you. My dad, who was frustrated, I tried to explain some things. He was mean with me. My mother, weeping, okay? I'm in a cult, what's going on, all of this, right? So and this has been, Italy was a couple years before, so I'm trying to explain. I'm like, look, I'm getting baptized, I'm joining the church. So my mom says, I got one last request for you. You come back home and you meet with the Catholic priest, the leading priest of this diocese, okay? Father McGarty was his name. I knew him from my youth. Okay? I was like, oh no, please, Mom, don't make me do that. I don't want to do that. It's not going to change anything. She's like, if you respect me as your mother, you're coming back up, you're going to meet with him. It's like, but she's like, before you get baptized. I was like, okay, fine. Jose was like, don't go, brother, get baptized and then go up there. I'm like, don't worry, Jose. This priest isn't going to convince me, So I fly up there, and I go to this fancy office, carved wooden desk, leather chair, and Father McGarty. He teaches in the university. He's highly looked up to. But I didn't really respect him because I worked at a country club because I like playing golf. I got free golf at this country club. He was a drunk. He was there every day, drinking hard liquor, and this was his ministry, talking with the country club members at the bar and playing golf almost every day. It's like, what kind of godly work is that? I just had no respect for it. Anyway, I went in there with respect, though. And I called him pastor, because I wouldn't call him father, because the Bible says call no man father, right? And he caught on to that right away. So he was kind of irritated. And he's like, your mother tells me you're studying with Seventh-day Adventists. I said, yeah, well, that's correct. Yeah. And he said, so who was William Miller? So I was like, oh, he started with William Miller. I was like, okay, because I was trying to wonder what he's going to say. What does he know about the Adventists? So I was like, so he just dug into the roots. Right? He was like, you think William Miller's a prophet? You think, he's like, I tell you, he thought Jesus was coming soon, and he had a date, and it didn't come, so he's a false prophet, and you're in a false movement. And he starts going on like that direction. I was like, okay, well, this is how I understand it. And so I start explaining about the sanctuary and so forth. And he's like, I was like, okay, let's move on to another topic. Okay, so we talk about the Sabbath. And he starts telling me there's a Sabbath, there's the Bible. I said, the Catholic Church assumed responsibility to change the Sabbath to Sunday. Okay, I've read it through, the Catholic records. He's like, so I'm not really interested in traditions. I'm interested in the Bible at this point because that's where I had an experience. And so he says, no, the Bible teaches Sunday as the Sabbath, and he says it's Acts chapter 20, verse 7, and so we looked at it. I said, well, I know this verse very well. I just don't understand how you can feel that that's evidence for changing the Sabbath. So I gave a few ideas, and we moved on, and then he's like, well, your mother tells me you're not drinking anymore. You got a problem with alcohol? And now I said, now I'm in trouble. So I said, well, he says, don't you believe in Jesus? Jesus turned the water into wine. He gave wine to his disciples. You got a problem with you not drinking alcohol now? That's a big problem. The world's problems would be solved if I go back to drinking. So I said, well, I read a book on it by this man, Samuel Bakioki, and I've thought it through, and I really feel like Christ was using pure grape juice, not fermented. And he almost fell out of his chair. He'd never heard that theory before, apparently. But he slammed his fist down on the table. He says, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I said, well, I'm sorry, you feel that way, but that's where I'm at, So he kind of composes himself. He says, are you sharing this information with other people? I said, yes, I am sharing it. We go door to door, and we share these truths with people. Yes. And then he got this really dark look on his face. He says, well, it's my job to tell you that you're going to hell for what you're doing. And you're going to burn in hell for what you're doing. And so I said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Pastor. I just don't see how I'm going to burn in hell for following the Bible. Seems like kind of a stretch, don't you? So he backs off, and then he says, you're strong in your faith, and that's good. You just need to be educated. You're just with the wrong people. You need to go to school. You need to get educated. You could be a great worker for God. And I know a school. It's a very good school. It's hard to get into, but I can get you in that school. It's a Jesuit school. And when he said that, I was like, immediately I was like, whoa, because I never heard about Jesuits growing up. No one ever hardly talks about them. But the whole past year, hanging out with Adventists, I heard plenty about Jesuits, and I read the Great Controversy, okay? So I knew what was going on there. So I was kind of shocked. I was like, because this Great Controversy talks about people getting bribed. I was like, this guy's trying to induce me to become a Jesuit. I can't believe it. I was like, I didn't say anything. I was like, and so I was quiet, and he's like, he could see I wasn't really showing much interest, I guess. I was just kind of like, and then he says, well, it's also very expensive. That college is very, very expensive to go to. I will personally pay for all 4 years of your college, which is well over $100,000 back at that time, which was 1999. So I said, that's really generous of you, and I really appreciate it, but honestly, I'm really not interested in any way. So, I appreciate your time with me today, but I think I better be going. But before I leave, I want to leave you with this. So I left him a book from Samuel Bakioki called From Sabbath to Sunday. I said this was researched at the Vatican Library and printed on the Vatican press. The insignia is here. It proves that the church took the responsibility of trying to change the Sabbath to Sunday. And so I want to leave that with you. And so I left, and yeah, my mom, I was outside waiting, and she's like, honey, how did it go? I said, well, it went very well. It was a nice talk. I didn't tell her all that stuff about going to hell and everything. I said, we have a disagreement, and, we see things differently, and so, I'm going to be baptized as a Seventh-day Adventist. And so so I flew down, and that's what happened. So I was baptized at Wildwood. So let me just bring Wildwood briefly into this. So Wildwood was 30 minutes from this farm, and I was going to church at Wildwood. Jose was bringing me there, and the pastor of the Wildwood Church was the one studying with me and my buddy, and we both ended up it was an interesting Bible study with us because we didn't know anything about the Bible hardly. So our questions were not so much doctrinally. We wanted to know what was going on with aliens and pyramids and all kinds of weird stuff. And this poor old pastor, Atwood, was like, well, let me, he was trying to bring out Bible verses, and bless his heart, we were the unusual kind of students for him. But he really liked us, and he baptized both of us. And so then I was thinking, what to do with my life, and I could see what was going on there at Wildwood. They have a lifestyle center. They heal people physically, and they bring them to the country, a beautiful country setting. Just great food, great people, loving atmosphere, and I could see people that were really just in a pit of their lives, emotionally or physically, being completely restored in weeks, 4 weeks sometimes, and just having their lives kind of changed. And I was like, this is just really, really good ministry. I wasn't a lifestyle guest, but really when I think about it, I was like, well, at Italy, I was kind of a lifestyle guest. Definitely would have qualified as one. So I noticed when I started eating better, living in the country, my spiritual interest grew. When I was in the city with music and television and busyness and so forth, I found it harder to hear God's voice in my life. But when I was in a country setting, taking care of my personal health and being in nature, I just tended to be more spiritually interested, okay? I felt like I could hear God's voice more in my life, that I was growing spiritually. So because that was my experience, I felt like I wanted to really get involved in this kind of work. Whatever this kind of work was, I didn't really understand it, but I knew that Wildwood there was over 100 ministries around the world that had restaurants like the one in Switzerland, and farms like the one in Italy, and lifestyle centers like the one at Wildwood. And so I was like, well, I think I want to be a missionary for the rest of my life. I'm making this change. I'm leaving all my friends, all my family. I'm completely leaving Wisconsin, turning my back on everything that I knew, and starting my life completely anew. But God's promises are fulfilled. I gained 100 mothers and fathers and grandmothers and brothers and sisters, and it was just a great. There was no loss for me. There was only gain, great gain. So I never looked back, and I felt like I'm going to serve the Lord wherever He wants me. I was foreign mission work. I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. That was my mentality. And so I was thinking of where to go. I wanted to take a short a mission training. I was thinking of go to study under Louis Torres because I heard about him and some of these other guys kind of close to my age, Daniel Mesa, David Asherick, Nathan Renner, and I met some of them. Sorry. So I applied there and I was accepted, and I was really on my way there. But I gave the Lord kind of one last prayer, and I said, I don't really know how to find your will, but if you want me to go anywhere else, I'll change my plans and I'll go there. And so, and I went to sleep that night. I woke up the next morning, and a strange occurrence happened to me anyway. Pastor Atwood is the president of Wildwood. He wouldn't have known anything. He did not know that I was applying to Mission College of Evangelism. He wasn't that in touch with me. But he called me that morning and offered me a job at Wildwood. And when he did so, I felt a deep impression from the Holy Spirit that this was God's plan for me. I can't really explain how, but I knew Pastor Atwood and I respected him deeply, and the Holy Spirit was saying, you should be mentored, by this man here. He's offering you an opportunity, you should take it. And so I was convinced, almost immediately. I prayed, but it was like overwhelmingly convincing to me, okay? I had zero doubt. I was 110% sure that God had led me to change my plans. And so I tore up my letter to Mission College, and I went, and I was on my way to Wildwood. But before going, there was some time lapse there, and I had this like amazing attack from the enemy, and I read this interesting statement from the Ministry of Healing that when one leaves the ranks of the enemy and joins the Lord's army, he's gaining an adversary that will now wage attacks on this new convert. And so, I read that later. I experienced it firsthand. So I was on the farm. I was on my tractor. There was a field that we hadn't farmed that summer. This was in the fall. The grass, weeds were high. And so I was just supposed to cut it down with a bush hog. Bush hog, blade, 6 feet diameter, spinning around like a helicopter behind me. And they had told me in my training on how to run a tractor, I should stay in second gear. First or second gear, okay? Not third or fourth gear. So, but I was impatient, and I felt like this is a flat ground, and why not? So I put it in third gear, and I started cutting the grass faster, which to me, good. So I'm just kind of booking around this farm, and I'm like, now we're getting somewhere. It was a little boring, just up and down with this going like really, really slow. So I'm kind of an impatient person, so I've got it up in third. But then I think, I wonder if you can still even cut the grass and be in fourth gear. So I put it up in fourth gear, and now I'm really cooking along in this field. And I'm looking back to make sure the grass is still even getting cut. I'm just going round and round and round, up and down. I thought, I was doing good. And maybe everything would have been good if everything was perfect. But I realized soon you need to go slower in case things don't go right, okay, and you don't get into big of trouble too quickly. So little did I know that someone had planted a pile of lime in the middle of that field that was covered in grass and kind of camouflage, and I didn't see it until I slammed into it, which launched my tractor straight up in the air, and I felt like I was almost flipping backwards. I was grabbing onto the steering wheel, scared out of my wits, like, oh, I've really messed up here. So I'm just like holding on for dear life. Tractor is up, and it starts falling forward. So I'm like, okay, at least it didn't go backwards and crush me. So it falls forward, boom, and I'm holding on, and I'm kind of climbing over this pile. And as I level off, I kind of relaxed, and I thought, whew, that was close. And immediately then, I was thrown off of this tractor. Looking back, what happened, I guess I just didn't judge the bush hog, which was trailing a bit further back. So when I leveled off, I kind of relaxed my muscles a little bit, just enough that when the bush hog sat on top of this pile of lime, it would have jolted the tractor. And enough that I felt like I was slipped on ice. I was down quick. And I just barely held on with my left hand. So I'm holding on to the steering wheel with my left hand, trying to pull myself up. The back right tire with this thick tread was turning on my back, pulling me down, and there was no way out. Nobody was around. I couldn't pull out of that. So eventually my arm was going to give way, which it did, and I went down head first underneath the tractor. So I should have been dead right there. That's just an accident that you don't really make it through, because you're going to get cut up by that bush hog. So I get my head run over. I have got the whole weight of the tractor on my skull. I'm on a face plant. I just remember that I could feel the weight of this tractor. Like, you know how if you put an egg in your middle of your hand, and if you squeeze it just right, you can squeeze really hard and it won't break? I could feel like that was going on with my skull. Like I felt like my skull was almost squashed, but somehow it held. So if anyone says I have a hard head, I cannot argue with them, Chuck. So it rolls down my back, and my entire rib cage just, I just feel all of my bones cracking to pieces, okay? Then I feel this explosion in my leg. I felt my femur broke in half. I was getting torn to pieces, okay? And I thought, I'm dead. I'm a dead man. Suddenly I feel a jerk on my left leg, and I'm getting dragged by my left leg. Well, I fell to the right, and it seems as though the only thing I can figure is like my boot got stuck in the hydraulic lever or maybe the pedal. Probably not. It seems like maybe somewhere there my boot was stuck, and my ankle was twisted, my leg was twisted, but it was saving my life. So I'm getting dragged down by my left leg. My right leg was, actually what happened was my knee hyperextended backwards. So that felt like my femur blew up, but it was actually my ACL ligament exploding, which is an interesting feeling. You can feel it from head to toe. It's like inside, because it's like thousands of pounds of pressure, right? So I'm just being pulled around in this field. No one was around. So, I mean, how long is that going to go on for, right? So I've got some moments to think about my life now while I'm feeling this wind on the back of my head. And I turned around and looked, and I was 9 inches from the blades of this bush hog, which was now in 4th gear, recovering and cruising down the field. Okay. Should have been 1st gear. So I'm trying to get out. I'm looking everywhere. My arm was broken. My chest was crushed. And there was no way. I was stuck. I was pinned, and I was just being dragged. And so I thought, I'm this is the end for me. And so my first thought was, why now? I've been through this long experience, and I've finally surrendered to God, and I've got a purpose for my life, and now I'm dead. That was the end of it. None of my friends, none of my family, no one would ever know what I was even doing in Tennessee. And I just thought, it's a shame, I really wanted to serve God, and I'm not going to have a chance. But what am I going to do about it? So I said, well, I do believe God's in control of things, and I know I might have made a big mistake here, but if God really wanted to save me, He could, and if He sees me, it's time for me to go. I'm just glad I got an opportunity to know the Lord, and looking forward to seeing Him in heaven. So I started thinking, well, what was that Bible study again about what happens when you die? So I start remembering the Bible study. I'm like, yeah, death is asleep, so I'm going to get my head chopped off. And because eventually my boot was going to come down, and I was going to get run over by this bush hog. So I was like, it's going to be over quick for me, so I wasn't too nervous about the pain of it, I guess. And I was already just really, probably, in shock about the whole thing. It was very exciting and a circumstance, so I wasn't really worried about pain. I was just like, I'm dead, But that's okay if God sees it fit. So I really resigned to the fact. I only felt bad for my friend that was going to have to find me. And I thought, well, I'm going to sleep here real soon. And I had a great opportunity, to find salvation in the Lord. And so the next thing I know, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to open my eyes, and I'm going to see Jesus coming in the clouds, and I'm going to hear His voice. That was the thought that I had in my head, and believe me, that was a comforting thought. And so I was at total peace to die. I had surrendered that. I didn't argue with God anymore about it. So I was ready I was at peace with God about it. So I said, okay. So if that's how it is, that's how it is. And then suddenly, my foot started to come out. So, and my heart stopped. And I was like, this was just this amazing climactic moment, where my foot was slipping out, and I realized this was the end of my life, and I cried out verbally. Everything else was in my mind, but there was a verbal cry, but it wasn't save me. It was, Jesus, I'll see you in heaven. That's all I could. That's what That's what came out of my mouth, right? So, which shows, in my mind, I wasn't, save me, I don't want to die. I was like, okay, I'm dead. What am I going to do? I got to accept that, and I've just yielded to the Lord. So I said, I'll see you later, basically. See you when you come and get me. So I was, Jesus, I'll see you in heaven. And I remember going like this, like it was going to make a big difference. But as soon as the words left my mouth, boom, the tractor stops. And I just hear the blades going, boom, 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 boom. Quiet. Just like that. It was I was like, okay, that didn't happen. I'm alive here. What kind of shape am I in? The first thought that came in my head is like, oh, am I going to be paralyzed now? Am I going to have to go through rehabilitation? So I was like almost like disappointed in it, and like halfway. It was kind of like I was reading a story about Ellen White, on vision, seeing heaven and coming back to the earth. It was almost like I was like, there, and now, zoom, I'm starting to feel my knee. I start coughing up blood, and I'm like, does God want me to be alive? All right, so I was like, well, I guess God wants me to be alive. So I got to get out of here. And I thought, hey, wait, once I cough and this blood came out, I was like, I could still die. So I got to get myself to the hospital. So I had to get out, which was not an easy process. So my leg was still kind of stuck, didn't fall out. So I had to do a sit-up and push it out. And if you've ever had your chest run over by a tractor before, that's not an easy feeling. So when you sit up, it feels like a knife is being sunken into your chest. And so I couldn't do it. I tried several times, and then I realized, I got to get out of here. Because it could be hours before I could have internal bleeding. So if God wants me to be alive, I got to do all my effort to stay alive now. So I pray, and I got this idea. I was like, well, exhale all the air out of your lungs and just lunge forward in faith. So that's what I do. I exhale, and my boot came out. So I was able to kind of pull up and get up on my left leg. It was sore, but I could stand on it. I could hop on it. My right leg could not put any weight on it, and I could hardly breathe. I was in this position, so I was like, just getting out from the tractor, and I'm looking around. I'm like, what happened, And I see the battery was like thrown out from the tractor, and the front wheel like hit a very little tree, only like that big. It just hit it straight on and just killed the engine. And right beyond that was a gully that we would have just gone tumbling down. So it would have been a mess. So I'm like this, and I looked down, and there was a stick right in front of me with a Y on the top, exactly perfect size for a crutch for me. I'm not kidding. It was like the perfect, just happenstance crutch. I didn't have to break anything off. It was just like, I was like, oh, wow, look at that. Thank you, Lord. It's crutch right there. I couldn't believe it. I was like, God wants me to be alive. All right. So I start hopping like this, making little breaths, and I had to hop like quite a ways, like a kilometer maybe, out of this field, down this road. It was hard. I was trying not to look up, just look one step at a time. So I get at this institution I was at, this farm I was at, this old academy place. There was an office building there. I didn't really know what everybody was doing in there. It was OCI headquarters. I don't know if you know what OCI, this Outpost Centers International Ministry. And so I was there. They were the closest house. So I went there, and I was in the back, and I was like, help. Well, they couldn't hear me. They were inside. So I had to go all the way around, through the parking lot, up the walkway, up the steps. I was just exhausted. And I knock on the door, and they all coming running up. I've got blood all over me. I had mud smeared, my hair sticking up. I'm hunched over like this. I'm just swaying around. And they're like, what happened? And I looked at them. I said, I just got ran over by my tractor. I need to go to the hospital. So they took me to the hospital, and honestly, that's where the torture really began. I don't need to go into all this, but this one guy was like, I was on the steel table, and this one guy was taking my knee, and he was bending it to see if I had ligament damage. It was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. I was yelling at the guy. And then later on, he's like, let's do an MRI just to make sure, what. I was like, that's a really good idea. That would have been a good idea in the beginning, in fact. No, he was like this, and then he was to the inside, and he was up. It was hard. It was really hard. But anyway, my only injuries were a torn ligament, slightly broken arm. It wasn't a bad fracture. My jaw was like off-centered, but it kind of clicked back with some exercises because my teeth weren't right. And that came back. My ribs were in perfect condition, no breaks. My lungs were bruised. I had bleeding in my kidneys. So my whole rib cage just went back into place. So apparently ribs, like they'll break more easily with a sharper strike. If it's like a rolling motion like that, it gives the cartilage a chance to bend and pop. So that's all that cracking and popping was like the cartilage. Really weird, but that was it. So, God saved me, so I'm really thankful to be alive. And I was very thankful to be alive then, even though I, had this weird experience, like almost dying, and accepting that, it's probably one thing to accept, to almost die and like really not accept that, but then it's like another experience to like almost die and have completely accepted that. So, I've really felt like since then I'm like, hey, I'm living on borrowed time here. Like the only reason I'm alive is because God, and I'm not going to turn my back on Him. So the only reason I'm here is to serve. And so, Lord, help me to never be distracted from that mission. I'll do whatever you want me to do. However you guide me. And I don't know how that would be. I wasn't sure then. But just day by day, I've tried to follow what God calls me to do. And so little by little, I've gotten more involved in ministry and mission work. And I have saw, how health helped me and my friend. He's still a Seventh-day Adventist today, joined the church. And so, that's why I feel kind of indebted to the Lord, not only indebted to the Lord, but indebted to that kind of like, that message, which is a clear work that God's people have been called to, is to use the right arm, as it's called, the right helping hand. It's like the gospel in practice. So that's been my experience. Anyway, so I ended up moving to Wildwood, getting trained there, and so forth. I mentioned earlier running the school. I met my wife there. My wife is from Brazil. She was a student there. I didn't have any relationship when she was a student there, honestly. But she left, and she went to Brazil, and I was interested, though. So I chased after her down there, because I was a director of the school. I wouldn't have a relationship with students, okay? But when she left, I was like, well, now it's fair game, So I went down to Brazil, and I was like, I was doing some speaking down there. I needed a translator, so I was like, who could I call down there? So I asked her if she would translate for me, and I met her family and everything. And we had a friendship at Wildwood, so that's a whole nother story. But anyway, we ended up having a relationship, getting married. And so she's very focused in the ministry. She loves cooking, doing cooking classes and things. We've got 2 little daughters, 3 and 5 years old. And so, so Wildwood has been home base. I've had a chance to travel and do work in over 50 countries, but Wildwood's always been like a home base for me. And now, really, since having children, I don't travel as much. I don't want to be an absent. I want to be there with my family. Just short little trips here and there. For the most part, I'm there. And so it's a blessing to be in ministry with a wife that is equally committed to missionary work. That's just a real blessing. And so, I'm happy to be alive, and I'm happy to be involved in this work. There's something special about waking up every day and knowing what God called you to do, whatever that is. This is just my journey. Everyone has their own path that God leads them in. But to wake up and know God has called me to this work. It's just not some job that I do, that I wait for the weekends to enjoy the things that I enjoy. I like my work, right? And it's just a special thing. I don't know how much time we have left, but I don't know about you, but I just feel like things are accelerating in the world. And, now's not the time to channel our energies into selfish pursuits. But God wants to use us and the talents that we have to help other people learn about Christ. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But health ministry is a very effective and powerful way to get in touch with people from the communities around us. And so, and not everyone's going to respond to the exact same way. So I wouldn't have gone to the vegetarian restaurant, but I would have gone to the farm, right? But somebody will go to that restaurant, and somebody will go to this meeting, but not that meeting. So you do have to cast out different methods. So we're going to go over some practical methods tomorrow afternoon. And then, we'll be doing this home remedies coach certification course this coming week. I hope that this experience of this past year plus will maybe stir us. I don't know if it's interested you to learn more about, how to battle these sort of things and not just be like totally dependent on, scientists. I'm not going to give speeches about anti-vaccine or anything, but if we don't have that, we need to be prepared to treat common viruses and not be like going crazy. The world, we saw, a pandemic comes, people go out of their minds. They don't start not even thinking right. And they're scared. Well, this should not be us. Of all the people in the world, we should not be the ones that are totally turned upside down by these sorts of things. We should be calm, saying, I know that's going to happen. Matthew 24, Christ was very clear there will be pestilences in the last days, and this will be the beginning of sorrows. So we know that there will be more pestilences. There'll be far worse viruses facing us in the future. Well, this was a little training ground. Maybe God has given us an opportunity, to improve where we may have been lacking a little bit, and to know, of course, we're in His hands, but there are things that we can do that He has directed us to help us be healthy and overcome common diseases like viral infections. So that will be part of the training, using hydrotherapy with the power of water. There's a really, really neat statement that I hadn't seen before, really, or I had forgotten, but I'd read it recently, that it says air, water, and sunlight, God's great remedies. These have a tremendous power for healing. Okay, those three. We talk about the 8 laws of health, but these in particular, like air, water. How basic is that? Okay, air. But it's interesting. It's almost so basic, it's challenging. So, in what way is air such a powerful remedy? We kind of breeze over that a little bit. Water. Well, in what way can water be a powerful remedy? Okay. So, we're going to spend most of the time on. That's something I've been exploring lately. Is both. Air. So I've been practicing and studying into different, breathing, exercising breathing, and strengthening the lungs. That's a whole nother thing. But water itself is tremendously powerful. And so I use it every day. I love hydrotherapy, and I'm excited to be in Michigan where I feel like the water might be a little bit colder. So I'm actually excited for that, Chuck, because I've been getting into these different cold things. It feels really great. You have to believe me on that. So I'll talk about that a little bit on Sunday. So I hope you all are able to come for that. But we'll be here as well tomorrow. I'll be speaking for church, and so thank you for being here this evening and taking the time to be here. So if you have any questions, if I didn't make sense on something or I left something out and you have like a question in your mind, you can ask me afterwards about my own story and experience. But otherwise, I'd like to invite you to kneel with me, and we'll have a word of prayer. Dear Father, Lord, thank you so much as the Sabbath is upon us for setting aside that time for us. Help us to really have an experience that will draw us nearer to you. Thank you for helping us through another week. Help us to lay aside the cares of the week and give time to study, prayer, fellowship. Thankful that you brought us up here to this church. I'm glad to be fellowshipping here and meeting new people. Just pray that you bless this time together and that you bless each one that has come. And maybe your Spirit has spoken to somebody here this evening as we've reflected on your calling for our life and the purpose for our life. I just pray that if you're touching somebody's heart tonight, maybe you're calling somebody to do something in particular, that you would help them yield to that calling, to place their trust in you, to move forward in faith, not even knowing where maybe you fully will be leading. But give us more faith, Lord, and trust in you, even through such troublous times. And surely there will be more trouble coming. But may these experiences build our faith and confidence in you, that you will help us and bring us through to the end. Thank you for Jesus and what he has done and is doing for us. Thank you for the salvation that we find in him. And we ask that you would bless us now as we rest and as we part. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Just a reminder that tomorrow we'll have the Divine Service, as he mentioned, and then the afternoon we'll have 3 afternoon programs tomorrow. I believe it begins at 2 o'clock, and that is actually going to be in the gymnasium, as Johanna was mentioning. And then Sunday begins that certificate program. And so if you're interested in being a part of that Sunday through Thursday, you want to make sure to register on our website at fairplainadventist.org. God bless you all.